There is so much information out there when it comes to fitness and nutrition, and also so much bullshit out there. I have this conversation with just about every person I talk to because of how bad it is. I think between social media, the influencers, and companies pushing their own agendas, even old school diet trends that are resurfacing, bro science, all the things, it's hard to know exactly what's true and exactly what's going to work for you in your journey. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with all the information out there, don't even know where to start, or they just spend so much time researching, trying to find the right plan just to get pulled in every different direction, end up not doing anything just because there's too much information, or they try something and it doesn't work and they feel like they failed, and it makes the journey that much more difficult and discouraging because you're stuck in that cycle. And for one, we're here to tell you it's not your fault these things have failed. They are setting you up for failure. And that's why I post the content I do. And that's why we want to break down some of the most common diet and fitness myths, where they came from, why they're wrong, and what you actually need to do instead. If you've ever felt stuck because you didn't know what's real and what's not, this episode is going to be for you.
Yeah, we often hear from clients that, like cutting carbs or, like I have to have a really good sweat, to get a good workout, or just doing like endless cardio is the key to weight loss. But these ideas are just totally misleading. And so we're here to set the record straight, right? And help you stop wasting time on methods that don't work so we can focus on what truly gets results. So we'll go over top 5 common myths that we've heard, and we'll talk about what's right and what you should actually believe.
Yeah, much needed.
What do you think? So, I mean, some of these have been around for like decades, and they still, I feel like they go through cycles of people kind of get away from them, but they go back to them. So what do you think just keeps these things hanging on?
That's a really good question. I don't even know, especially from our perspective, because we can look at it and be like, what the hell? Like, why is this even here?
Yeah.
But maybe it's because so many people hear about it and try it. And then, especially, I think with social media and like you being able to see what everyone's doing, maybe it makes it more common and people think that that's what they need to be doing.
Well, I was talking to someone the other day actually about this, and there's a lot of things even outside of the fitness world or just the society in general where we just do things a certain way. We've been doing it forever, and if you actually take a step back and ask people in charge, why are we doing it this way? You almost end up getting an answer that's somewhat like, well, we've always done it this way.
Mm.
And so I don't know if it's just like human nature where we just kind of stick to certain things and it's routine, and this is part of, like in general, change is so hard, and it's like, well, it's the way we've always done it, and there are people who see good results from it, and so I'm probably doing something wrong, but this is what they do, and so that's what I need to do. Or I don't know, it's probably a combination. And nowadays with social media, I think the fitness influencing thing is so big. There's so much fakeness, out there on the internet, social media, and ways that these people can manipulate their bodies and make it look like they have the actual plan and know what they're doing. And people are like, wow, they look amazing. I want to do exactly what they do. And there's just so many factors involved that people get caught up. But I think you're one of the most important things I think you said was that there's so much stuff out there. It is super confusing. I can only imagine someone that, doesn't love health and fitness like we do, and they're trying to figure out what's the right thing, and they're just seeing things and hearing things from all over the place.
Yeah, I know. And that's what it's so frustrating too, because all the things are basically very simple on what you need to do, but going online and especially with social media, you go on there and everyone just gets confused. And then, like I said, they end up not doing anything or trying things and it fails. And then they give up on the process when it doesn't need to be that complicated. And it is tough to see. I think it is a good point too in what you said that we just do things just because that's what we've always done. I didn't think about that, but I think that's accurate too.
Yeah, we just get caught up in those routines sometimes too.
And it's funny how like all those cycles resurface, even just in general, like fashion trends and like all this stuff. Like it always goes through cycles. These things always pick back up. So it's just interesting to see that happen too in the fitness space.
Yeah, so on the fashion trend thing, now you mentioned it. So Kendrick, right? Was that the guy? Is that his name? The guy, the rapper on the Super Bowl halftime show? Did you watch that at all?
No, I didn't
No.
watch it.
You don't know nothing that I'm talking about right now. Basically, he had like these flared jeans on,
Okay.
and that is my favorite type of jeans, and I've been wearing those forever. Like even though like they go out of style, like everyone's like in the skinny jeans. I'm like flared jeans, the bigger the better for me. So when I saw those, I'm like, yes, bring it back, man.
That's so funny. Is that the biggest excitement from the Super Bowl?
Yeah, pretty much. No, I was rooting for the Eagles. Not that I'm an Eagles fan or anything like that, and I have nothing against the Chiefs. It was actually, the Eagles just performed really well and just outplayed them. But in terms of the that's what I feel like everyone was talking about after the show,
Mm.
after the Super Bowl was the halftime show, and people either loved it or hated it. Like it wasn't kind of like in between. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, his jeans, I love his jeans, you know.
Who cares what's happening?
Yeah. Anyway, one thing too, it was funny. We talk about this all the time, but we'll have these conversations like off air, and then we're like, wait a minute, why aren't we doing this on air? Like this should be part of our like podcast. So we're talking about this conference, right? I know you've mentioned a little bit on social media, but tell us a little bit more about this conference that you have planned.
Yeah, so basically, I got asked to speak on stage at a conference, and
I
that's
like
my
when you say that. That's a great honor. You should be pretty excited about it, right?
yes, it's also just my biggest fear ever. Like, I never in a million years thought I would be doing that. And so, even just me thinking about it now, like, my heart is racing. I'm freaking out. And it is exciting, but it's mostly scary right now. But, we like part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast, not only to kind of help get more value out there and build that up, but also to lean into that fear of speaking. And I feel like that was a good first step in me going to right on stage. I feel like we're skipping a few steps in between. um, so it's definitely a big jump, especially because I've never spoken in front of anyone. But ultimately, whenever I'm scared of something, I just want to lean into it. And so I accepted the opportunity, especially because I feel like there's no way I could turn that down. Like if I had said no to this incredible opportunity that almost just fell into my lap, I feel like that's something that I would always regret and look back and wonder what if, and that's not the way that I live my life either. So I'm just gonna go for it. I actually committed, but right on the when I got on the call with the guy just to get all the information, just because I'm very structured, I'm like I want to know what to plan for, what to expect, and I literally just committed before anything because I knew like the more information I get, like the more real and scary it becomes. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. I'm gonna go on stage. I'll speak. I'll lead these groups as well. So I just committed to everything before I knew.
Yeah, the more you think about it, the more nervous or anxious, you're gonna get. So yeah, you just gotta be like, all right, I'm doing it, and then I'll worry about it later.
Yeah, pretty much. And even as I've been trying to start writing it and just thinking about it, like there's times where I do get excited. I think it'll be cool, and when I get into a really good flow and there's certain parts of the speech that I really like, I get excited for it. But then I think when I actually sit down and think about it, like I'm actually going to be on stage in front of hundreds of people, and I'm going to have to speak the speech that I've written and remember it and convey that in a way that impacts people. That's where I start to freak out.
Yeah.
I've had very many breakdowns. Like every time I think about that, like I literally start crying and I have to like go and journal and regroup myself. But it's it's definitely been taking a lot of my mental capacity. But I think again, it's something I know I need to do, and I keep trying to reframe it as it's just practice. It's a good growing experience. It's gonna open new doors, and if it goes horribly, like whatever, it's just a growing experience. No one's ultimately gonna remember that in a few years or a few weeks even. So not that anything bad is gonna happen, but like I always just reframe that so that way I can feel a little bit better about myself. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm excited but nervous.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be amazing. But I think, and one thing we were talking about too, that we're going to actually do a future podcast on this is how we respond to things. And, I was listening to this, it's a Christian motivational speaker, I guess, is his title or something. And one of the things he was talking about was just doing it, right? Kind of going with a Nike slogan type of thing. And he had other ideas, but the main thing that I'm going to relate to this he said someone came up to me one day and was like, how do you not get so full of fear and nervous and anxious when you go up on stage and talk in front of these people? And he was like, oh, I do. He was like, every time I go up there, I am so nervous and I'm so fearful about what's going to happen. But he said, I just do it. And he said, so you know what? I do it in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of thing. So I don't think it's a bad thing that necessarily that you're fearful or that you're nervous or anxious about it. It's just knowing that, hey, you know what? Like you said, you're going to lean to the fear. You accepted it. This is what you're going to do. You're just going to do it through the fear, type of thing. And I think that's a good way of kind of rephrasing it and almost putting like you're in control of that fear now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a good way that we should approach life in general, even if it's not something big and major like speaking on stage. Just anything that you're afraid of or uncomfortable with, even getting into the gym can be uncomfortable and a little bit scary when you're not sure of how to do the movements, or it's just you're not sure people are judging you. It can be scary, but I think if you aren't scared, if your dreams or if the goals that you're chasing doesn't scare you, then it's not big enough. And so usually that's a good indication, hey, we need to lean into that. Even like what I was doing with the cold plunging. Like now I really love that. I used to be afraid of the cold and now I actively go and seek out sitting in ice baths for fun. So it's just that type of thing. Whenever, at least for me, whenever I feel fear, I'm like, all right, going full force. And so this is, I think, the I don't know if I could ever top this. I guess I don't want to, we'll see what happens, but
Yeah, I think we just need to realize that our emotions are so valid,
hmm
right? And sometimes, like at least for me, what I want to do if it's a negative emotion, I want to like push it away or hide it or get rid of it or something.
hmm
I think sometimes it's almost better just to lean into that and be like, you know what? Okay, I'm fearful, I'm scared, I'm nervous, whatever it may be. I'm just going to do it in this fear, as I'm fearful, as I'm scared, as I'm nervous, or whatever, and just crush it in the fearness.
yeah, for sure. So what's been going on with you though?
Not a whole lot. I mean, typical day. Oh, actually, I was gonna tell you about this. So I was walking into the gym. And it was about a few hours ago. I was walking to the gym, and someone else, another member gets out of their car, and we're walking about the same time. It's kind of, at the gym, it's funny. You have those people that you know really well, and you have those people that you see all the time. You really talk to them, but you see them all the time. And then there's people that you've talked to before. You don't really know them that well. You don't know anything about them, but enough to be like, hey, how's it going? Type of thing. And this is one of those guys, and he was saying hi, and I was saying hi, and he said something like, are you ready for the workout? And I said, oh yeah, man. He goes, you are? And like almost like he like questioned. I was like, yeah. I was like, why wouldn't I be? I was like, every time I've had a workout, I've felt great afterwards. And he was like, really? like shocked. And I was like, yeah. I said, have you not? He goes, whoo. He goes, I don't know, man. He goes, I am not ready for every workout. And he was like, I don't know how you do it. And I was like, well, I mean, I said, I don't go into every workout feeling fantastic. Like not every single day is amazing. I mean, there might be some days where I come in here, I'm tired, or I'm not feeling great, or I've had a long day, or I'm in a bad mood. And so each workout changes a little bit. I may come in here and it may not be as intense, or I may come in here and I don't have like nearly as much time, or I may come in here and maybe I may be super pumped and I have all the time in the world. I can do whatever I want, and so every workout's a little bit different. But yeah, I feel great afterwards. And he's like, oh man, he goes, that's awesome. He goes, I'm totally different. He was like, I come in here. He goes, I got to go all out. He goes, if I don't go all out, then it's not a, workout for me. I just don't show up, and this wasn't somebody that, needed to lose like 50 pounds or anything like that. I mean, just, he, looks pretty healthy and looks like he works out a lot type of thing. But he just, it was just a completely different mindset. And I was thinking about that and I feel like and we're going to kind of talk about that in a little bit, but how I think a lot of people feel like if they are not just like at their optimal level, then it's just not worth going into work out, or to doing that thing that they need to be doing to get closer to those goals. So I definitely wanted to bring up this conversation and hear your thoughts on what he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, it depends on the context, but we always say in general, you should never walk out of your workout feeling worse than when you went in. You should feel more energized, pumped up. You should feel better walking out. And I
Yeah.
think usually when you're beating yourself into the ground like that, because I've been in that cycle where I was in there for hour and hour just killing myself in the gym, is not sustainable long term usually, and that's usually where people get stuck in that all or nothing mentality and that on off cycle too. So I feel like that's the common trend, because especially if you go and beat yourself into the ground and then you're so crippled you can't go to the gym the next day, it just creates that cycle of you can't be consistent because you're constantly on and off or just recovering from the last main workout and it takes you a week to recover.
Yeah, and it's really, especially if we're looking at a sustainable journey through health, it's that consistency, and the more barriers that are in your way, you're super sore, you're super tired, or whatever it may be, because of, you're wearing yourself out and beating yourself up, either mentally or physically. And that's just one less chance that you're going to be consistent.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to check yourself too. If you feel like you need a nap after, or if you're so crippled sore after that you can't move the next day or you can't train the rest of the week, it's just a good kind of check to see where you're at and what your programming looks like or how your structure looks. And maybe it's time to reevaluate because you can still get an amazing workout and really push yourself without feeling so dead and drained after.
Yeah, and have you ever had a situation where like you're super tired or bad mood, whatever it may be, and you're like, I'm just going to go in and do like one exercise, and you ended up getting in like an hour, and just the workout was fantastic. Sometimes you just need to get in, walk in that door, and just start. And once you get moving, your body's like, yes, I needed this today. You weren't thinking I needed it. I wanted it, I needed it, and now you just feel so much better.
Those are always the best workouts too. And I think it's because you didn't have expectations going in. You're like, oh, it's gonna suck, or I'm just gonna do one thing, and then you get in, and one, you obviously get the benefits physically from working out, but also you followed through on a promise to yourself. You showed up when you didn't feel like it, and I feel like that alone makes the workout one of the best workouts that you always have. So it is always cool getting in and just committing to something, and then, like you said, usually you end up doing a lot more, and you end up getting a hell of a good workout out of it.
Yeah, you get that mental high. Obviously, like you said, you have the physical benefits, but you mental high, and it's like, man, I broke through this. I did this type of thing today. Even if you don't think those exact words, like you feel that, and your body knows that.
And that's what we always preach with clients too. Even if they're having a rough week or work is super crazy, I'm like, hey, let's just show up and get something in. Show up,
Mhm.
check the box, show up for yourself. Even if it's just a couple of the exercises, if you're just getting in and walking, we want to do something to keep the promises to ourselves, to show up and continue the consistency. And that alone is a major win, even if the workout isn't necessarily perfect.
Yeah, we're trying to become a person that does, fill in the blank,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so a lot of times, part of that is, no matter what's going on in life, I'm going to do something that is moving me closer to that person I want to become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that frame. You're creating that identity. You're making the habits automatic. You are the type of person that does that. You're not just going to the gym here and there when you feel like it. You are a healthy, a fit person. I was talking to someone else about this too. Like, you need to make it a part of your identity and make it so automatic that's just what you do.
Yeah, that's who you are.
Well, that being said, shall we get into myth number one?
Yes, top five. Now, we didn't put these in any order, did we? I don't think we
No,
did. Okay, yeah.
no, just some of the top ones that we've seen and heard that we feel like we need to address.
Top five. And if you know more out there, audience, let us know. We'd love to talk about those as well.
I'm sure there'll be many more of these episodes too.
Yeah, yeah, there are more than five out there, but these are just five that we picked that we thought would be good to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so first one is carbs make you fat, or carbs are bad in general. I think this may be one of the most overused ones. I feel like I hear this all the time, but carbs do not make you fat. The only thing that actually makes you fat or gain weight is eating more calories than your body burns.
Yeah.
Carbs in general are your body's preferred energy source. They fuel your workouts, they help with recovery, they support brain function. The issue isn't the carbs, it's the type and the quantity of carbs that people eat.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you're eating those ultra processed carbs, and I'm talking about things like chips or pastries or just drinks that are just loaded with that added sugar, then most likely you're probably overdoing it. But if you're getting carbs from whole food sources, rice or potatoes, oats, fruits, vegetables, they're going to help you and not hurt you. And, there is that whole fruit debate out there, right? Like you can get on, social media right now, and there's one side of the camp that's like fruits are amazing. And then another is like, oh my gosh, there's sugar in fruit. Don't ever eat fruit. And it's like, what? Fruit is so amazing. My girls roll their eyes, but I'm always like, fruit's like nature's candy.
It
It's,
is.
it's so, I mean, I love the way it tastes. And the less of those ultra processed carbs you eat, the sweeter fruit is.
Yeah, that debate, I it seriously baffles me. I genuinely don't understand who the hell came up with that and how is that a thing? Fruit is never bad for you, and I feel like it's not something that you can even overeat too. So The only types of sugars that you should be afraid of are, like you said, the processed ones that are like from any of the junk food, processed food stuff that's packaged that has a bunch of added fake sugar. But natural fruit, anything that comes from the earth, totally fine, and you cannot overdo it.
Yeah, I mean, if you eat, well, I mean, it's got tons of fiber and like, tons of micronutrients. I mean, if you eat a big bowl of fruit and you sit there, I mean, you're pretty full.
Hmm.
So I mean, yeah. If someone tells you don't eat fruit, it's too much sugar or something like that, just smile and walk away.
And yeah, for some reason, all the time when people say that they want to lose weight, the first thing I usually ask them, okay, like, how's it going? What have you been doing? And they're like, oh, yeah, I cut carbs. I'm like, why? Why is that always the first thing? And so
Yeah.
that's why we wanted to make this as one of the top five that we talk about, just because it is so common. People automatically think that in order to lose weight, they need to cut carbs when that is not the reality. Like we said, it comes down to the overall types of foods that you're eating and the quantities of foods that you're eating in general. Carbs are not the enemy, but ultimately you have to find what works best for you. Like some people do really well with higher carbs, some people do well with more moderate carbs. So you've got to find what works well for you, but also finding the right food sources, like you said, more of the natural foods as opposed to the processed carbs, because obviously those are never beneficial for you.
Yeah, I think what happens is people end up eating, things like chips or, muffins, bread, stuff like that. And those end up being very high in carbs, but they're gaining weight is because it's just high in calories in general, right? So it's not a direct correlation, but that's what they're looking at and that's what they're linking it to. So yeah, and like you said, you really have to experiment. There are some people that, work, obviously you want to get your protein in, right? And then the remaining amount of calories, some people feel better on a little bit higher carb diet. Some people feel a little bit better on the little higher fat. And you have to kind of play around with it and see what works best for you.
Mm-hmm. Where do you land on that scale?
Um, it's interesting. So I don't know if there's a huge difference in me. I tend to lean, like if I'm just picking out foods, just in general, I tend to end up eating a little bit more fat than I do carbs. There was, back in the day when, fat was so demonized and it was like, you can eat whatever you want, just don't eat any fat. I mean, my fat levels were like single digit. I mean, it was like, all carbs and protein. And I mean, I saw great results and felt good on that too. So, I don't know if me personally, if it matters so much, as long as I'm getting enough protein in. And I typically get most of my carbs from fruit. I really do actually love fruit, and so I'll eat tons of fruit more than anything.
Yeah, I found with a lot of clients too, when you cut carbs, your energy is gonna tank. Like I said, your carbs are usually your body's main fuel source, and a lot of people too, when they start eating the right types of carbs, they'll notice how much better they feel day to day, and especially in their training. I feel like timing that around your training too is so huge just to help with your performance in the gym and your strength in the gym. For me, I definitely lean more toward the higher carb and slightly lower fat. It's still very, very balanced overall, but definitely I'll be eating like a few hundred grams of fat a day, or not fat, carbs a day. Um, and yeah, that's just how I perform and feel the best.
Yeah, but you experiment. You try it out different ways, and that's how it ends up working best for you. And that's what I think most people need to do, just kind of feel their way out.
Yeah, that's the overall theme of a lot of stuff that we talk about today, and just in general, is finding what works well for you. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. You got to experiment. You got to find what's optimal for you because everyone's body is going to be different. Everyone's experience is going to be different. So that's usually the common theme.
Yeah, and it may change.
Mhm.
You need to be willing to adapt and change either lifestyle or sometimes it's just within that month or something like that. Things might change through that week, that day, type of thing too.
Yeah, just that answer isn't as fun and isn't as sexy. It depends, but that's the reality of it. It doesn't sell, but that's what's true.
I know that's the toughest response, right? Because a lot of times we get these questions, we're like, "Well, it depends," and they're like,
Hmm.
"Well, I need an answer that is super amazing that I can post online and get a bunch of hits," right?
Hmm. I think that's also why people get stuck in the fad diets and just even these trends in general is because it's so black and white and so it's almost like so simple that it makes it easier to follow in a sense. Like obviously it's not easy to actually execute and like when you aren't feeling your best, like it makes it harder. But in general, the concept of it is simple. So I think that's probably why people cling to it too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, myth number two, another big one. Cardio is the best way to lose weight. This is a huge misconception. People automatically think that to lose weight, they need to do hours of cardio every week, but strength training is actually going to be better for long term fat loss and a million other benefits. But that's not the purpose of the episode. We can go into that another time. But yes, cardio burns calories in the moment, but lifting weights builds muscle, which increases your metabolism. So that way you're burning more calories automatically throughout the day, even when you're at rest.
Yeah, and our body adapts so well to movement, to cardio. So even if you are seeing some good results, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna, keep this at. Basically, your body's gonna get used to that, and then you're gonna either have to, eat way less, or you're gonna have to do more cardio and more cardio, and so it's kind of never ending cycle. And so the best approach is, prioritize strength training, right, and then use cardio as a tool. So again, cardio is fantastic for you, and it has a lot of benefits. But when it comes to weight loss, that's not the thing you need to be doing, right? So if your goal is fat loss, nutrition, strength training, and then cardio is just kind of that bonus. And what we recommend form of cardio is, other than if the client has a really favorite activity they like to do, is walking.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to what you said about having to do more and more to keep up because your body adapts so quickly, especially to cardio. Because that's where a lot of people tend to plateau is because they're doing all this cardio and they see some initial results and the weight starts to come off and then they hit that wall. And so either they have to ramp it up, like you said, reduce calories a ton, do a bunch of cardio, which again is just continuing to hurt your metabolism and just putting you in a worse state. And also it's just very time consuming and not very enjoyable to go to those extremes to lose weight. And then also keep in mind, without building muscle mass, you're just going to be, even if you lose weight, you're just a smaller version of yourself. And so a lot of people want that muscular defined look underneath. And that is what is going to come from strength training as well.
Yeah, and it's a much healthier look.
So that's the best approach. Strength training, like you said, nutrition, and then cardio supplement, but get lots of steps in throughout the day. That's usually our go to protocols for clients too.
Yeah. All right, so this one I love a lot. Sweat or soreness means a good workout, right? So I've heard that a bunch of times, like, oh man, like I was sweating and I obviously got a great workout, right? And I'm thinking, well, just because you sweat a lot doesn't mean that you had a great workout. It's basically just your body's way of cooling down. So you just overheated. It doesn't mean you burn more fat or built more muscle or had a more effective session. It just means that you got overheated and your body was doing what it had to do to cool yourself down.
Yeah, I always say you can do a bunch of random shit that doesn't get you any actual meaningful outcome, but you can be sweating. Or you can just be outside, like in Florida heat, and be sweating, or sitting in a sauna and sweating. But that doesn't mean that you actually move closer to your goals, or doesn't mean that you got fitter just because you're sweating. So instead of focusing on sweat, focus more on performance or the proper progression or the proper programming. Are you getting stronger? Are you improving endurance? Are you progressing in your workouts? These are the things that equate an effective workout, not just how beaten down or how tired or how sore or sweaty you are.
Yeah, and then soreness, is not the best indicator of progress, right? I think I think what happens is in the beginning of someone's journey, you know, it's pretty natural or common for someone to be sore after they work out, right? You push your body to the limits. It's not used to this, and so your body's sore, right? And so, but you start seeing these results, and so you kind of start that correlation of, oh, I'm sore. I had a great workout. I'm sore. I had a great workout. I'm sore. I'm losing weight. Or I'm gaining muscle, right? So it's basically just a sign of muscle damage or doing something new, and over time, your body will adapt to that, and so there will be times where you're a little bit sore, but basically your soreness just means that you're overdoing it some. So if you're constantly sore, your body's not giving that opportunity to really recover, right? And so you can make significant gains, without feeling sore every time. And most of the time you probably shouldn't feel sore, and so just consistency, progressive overload, that's what's going to lead to results, not chasing that soreness. And so just focus on gradually, slowly, sustainably increasing your strength, performance, not necessarily how sore you feel the next day. And then, like I said, in the beginning, you will be pretty sore. It'll fade away. And every now and then you might get a little bit of soreness, depending on if you do something just brand new. But in general, it probably means you overdid it.
Yeah, people get into that mindset too. I think it comes from almost when you're trying to punish yourself. I think a lot of people, especially when they're doing cardio and stuff like that, they go in trying to burn off calories or trying to punish themselves because they don't like where they're at and they feel accomplished being super sore or sweaty, which again, like sometimes it can be a good indicator that you did make progress and you're on the right track. But again, it's not required, like you said. And especially when you're crippled sore, that's a very big sign that you overdid it for sure. Like at least for me too, like I rarely get super sore. Usually when I switch up my mesocycles, kind of like new stimulus, then I'll get a little bit sore. But like generally day to day, I don't get super sore. Sometimes it's just like a day or two. But yeah, most of the time I'm not, but I'm still progressing. I'm still building. So like you said, it all comes down to the proper programming, the proper progressions, and not necessarily going off of how beaten down you are or how sore you are.
Yeah, and I think, and you probably don't ever think about this, but I think a lot of people go into the gym like from a place of guilt and shame and like I'm going to beat myself up because of all these things I have to change instead of going into a place from love and I want to improve myself, I want to better myself and I want to, just make myself a better version of who I am.
I love that so much. It is such an important shift because I think, yes, sometimes you start your journey from that place of not liking yourself. I know I did. I hated myself when I got into the gym, and that's why I started that whole journey. But you have to make that shift at one point, and you cannot keep continuing doing it as a punishment or doing it because you don't like where you're at because it's just a losing battle and you're setting yourself up for failure long term. So you need to shift to, like you said, focusing on growing, becoming a better version of yourself. Even if you aren't satisfied with where you are, switching that mindset to where you're going and focusing on the growth and the good that comes from it. I think that makes a big difference. And the sustainability and kind of just plays into kind of like that conversation you had with the guy at the gym. Like it'll make it a lot more sustainable and make all the process way more enjoyable when you aren't beating yourself into the ground because you're in that negative mindset.
Yeah. Okay, so next myth is you need to eat 5 to 6 small meals a day to boost your metabolism. I remember when I was younger, and this is what I lived by. I was like, you have to eat like every couple hours, and you have to have protein. And I would get in like panic mode. If I didn't have that protein, like it's been like an hour and a half. I need some protein, otherwise my muscles are gonna start breaking down. I'm gonna lose all my gains. And so it's just a constant like I have to have food on me at all times, no matter what. I can't ever miss that window. And everyone in the fitness industry made it a huge deal. Like, well, you're just going to get smaller again if you don't eat every 2 hours, type of thing. And so our metabolism doesn't necessarily like speed up just because we eat more frequently. What matters at the end of the day is that total caloric intake, right? Whether you eat 2 meals, 6 meals, as long as your macros and your calories are where they need to be, then you'll get the same results. Again, going back to that experiment thing, sometimes, you may be someone that just feels great on 2 to 3 meals a day. Maybe just the way your lifestyle is, maybe you do need to eat a little bit more throughout the day or whatever. Either one's fine. You can figure out what works best for you, but either way, you're still going to be able to get the same results.
Do you think that mentality for you of needing to eat basically 24/7 came from, because I know you, especially you wanted to bulk up, like you were always like the smaller guy, wanted to get stronger, get jacked. And I think most people that go through that phase, obviously, it is tough to gain weight and you have to eat a lot. You have to be very consistent with that. Do you feel like that played a role into kind of falling into that cycle and trying to eat 24/7 basically?
Yeah, I do. I think one, you hear it from these guys who are way bigger than you are, way more muscular. And, like we've talked about, it is very difficult to gain muscle. And, I worked so hard, I was so consistent, I didn't want to lose all my hard-earned, work, a muscle that I had gained, and so I was like, you've got to eat, and these bodybuilders are telling you have to eat every few hours, otherwise you're going to lose that muscle. It's like, I've got to eat every 2 hours. I cannot get any smaller. If my goal is to get bigger, this is just not working well for me. So it was definitely a big mental game that I would have to fight with myself. And, in a way it becomes very restrictive, because you have to figure out, okay, I've got to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm in a place where either I bring something or I'm in a place where I can go get some protein. to make sure that I'm eating every few hours.
Yeah, this one in general, just the how many meals a day do I need to eat is one of the most common questions I get, which is why I wanted to include it in here. Because there is a lot of, like, there's the whole trend of one meal a day, and then, you hear that trend where you need to be eating every few hours. And again, it comes down to do what's best for you. There is no right or wrong way with how many meals a day you need to eat. I think, like you said earlier, you need to make sure that you're eating the proper quantities of macros and the right types of food in general. But as far as how many meals, it just depends what works well for you. One meal a day could be fine. A couple meals a day could be fine. Or if you want to do five or six, also fine. Just the consistency is what matters most, and finding the optimal plan for you, your lifestyle, your goals, and what's going to align with that.
Yeah, in my math class, a lot of times I'll teach my kids multiple methods of doing a problem or solving a problem, and I tell them like it doesn't really matter what strategy you use as long as it works well for you. If you're getting the answers right all the time, awesome, I love it. Go with that. What I get frustrated with and what I try to tell my kids is there are some kids that will stick to the same strategy even though they keep getting the question wrong. And I'm like, if this strategy is not working, why are we still doing it? And so again, you have to kind of play with that. And if you want to try a few meals a day and that works out well for you, go for it. If you need to eat smaller meals throughout the day, go for it. And I think also reflecting on whether you really do need to. Sometimes I think I know I eat, like if I have a day off or something, I'll eat more just because I'm bored. I have to remind myself, okay, am I really that hungry? Or is it just I'm walking around the house, I'm like, it sound good right now? A snack. Type of thing. And then also be okay with being a little hungry,
Hmm.
and decide, okay, is it okay that I'm, not perfectly full all day long? So just a couple things to think about as you decide and to kind of figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, such a good point. And you gotta experiment too. Try something. If it doesn't work, or reflect, like you said, make sure you actually take a step back and see, does this align? Does it work with my schedule, with what I have going on? Am I feeling hungry throughout the day? Where is that at? How's my energy? How's my performance in the gym? Looking at all these things and how it plays a role into that, and then experiment and test it.
Yeah, I like what you said about in terms of your schedule. A lot of people have such busy schedules, and just if you're like, okay, I think I need to squeeze this snack or meal in at this time of day, but you always have meetings during those days, and you can't get to that, then you're basically just setting yourself for failure every single time. So it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to have to wait 4 hours before I eat again, but I'm not going to be stressed out about whether I can squeeze this in or break it in, or you know what? At the end of the day, I didn't get in and I failed again on that. All right, myth number 5: lighter weights and high reps means toned muscles. All right, so a lot of people are confused whether to do light weights with high reps or heavyweight, low reps. There's a I don't know when this phrase tone came into popularity, but I remember I would have female clients. They would come to me and they say, "Okay, I don't want to get bulky. I just want to get toned." And in the fitness industry, it's like, okay, well, if you have a client that just wants to get toned, the prescription is high reps. Lighter weight, high reps, and that's how you get tone. And if you want to get bigger and stronger, you're doing higher weight, right, and lower reps. And so, muscle doesn't really get toned. It either grows or it doesn't. And to build muscle definition, you need progressive overload. Increasing weight, reps, or intensity over time. And it really doesn't matter. There's a lot of research that shows that you can gain muscle and lose weight, at any rep range. Again, it's great to kind of rotate those out and play with them and figure out, again, what your body responds best to. That over time, that'll get you the results that you want.
Yeah. This is another common one that I hear all the time is, oh, I need to do, or I switched up my programming. I want to lose weight, so I'm doing high rep, low weight type stuff. Or people ask, should I do one or the other? And no, they all have a place.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be utilizing everything in your programming. That's why proper programming is so important too, and being able to phase things out appropriately and incorporate things in the right way. But there's no one size fits all as far as you should only be doing high rep or only be doing heavier weight. Like everything has a place. Same with even like machine versus free weight type deal. Everything has a place. Everything needs to be utilized appropriately. So there's no black or white answer for that. And that's also typically how we program for clients too. We'll have different rep ranges for different types of movements based on what the movement is, how complex it is, and also where they're at in their journey. And I even like taking people through various phases, like doing a more endurance high rep phase, a hypertrophy phase, a strength phase. I like running people through those types of program phases as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times, a good thing to think about if you're just like, well, make it simple. I'm not quite sure what I should be doing. Think about what you've been doing for a long time, and especially if you're plateauing, and completely go opposite direction. So if you're typically doing like 8 to 10 or 12 to 15, at least 3 or 4 weeks of really pushing yourself on the weight and just cutting back on the reps, could make a huge difference in busting through that plateau.
Yeah, such a good point. You need a novel stimulus, whether that's with the exercises, with the rep ranges, with the tempos. All of those things can be manipulated to get you a better outcome. And again, all of them have a place. It just depends on where you're at. And especially, like you said, if you're feeling stuck and at a plateau, those are great options to manipulate as far as the rep ranges to get past that without switching up too many other variables.
Yeah.
So, truth is, there's a lot of information floating around, and if you don't take the time to learn what actually works, it's easy to fall in the trap of bad advice that keeps you spinning your wheels. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals always win. Eat real food, train with purpose, prioritize recovery, don't get caught up in all the fads, the gimmicks. The best approach is always the one that's sustainable and backed by science, and also what works for you. It's not just what sounds trendy or what everyone else is doing online or what you see your influencers pushing. It's always way simpler than most people make it out to be. And if you're struggling with where to start or you feel like you've been misled by some of these myths in the past, we're here to help. In our coaching programs and inside our private community, we break all this down, giving you clear, actionable strategies to help you actually see progress without all the confusion. So if you want access to resources, workouts, meal guides, expert guidance, make sure to join our free community. We'll link that in the show notes. And if you found this episode helpful, send it to a friend who needs to hear it. The more we can clear up these myths, the more people can actually start seeing results the right way. So thanks for tuning in. And as always, we will see you guys next week.